Now, during her reign, the Queen has sat for more than 140 portraits, more than 2 a year, but there's one we carry about in our pockets every day on our coinage, of course. Well, let's talk to Royal Portrait artist Richard Stone, who's in Colchester, and Royal Historian Kate Williams, who's here in the studio. Morning to you both.
Morning.
Good to see you. Richard, can I start with you? I'm trying to imagine just how nerve-wracking it is when you have to go and paint a portrait of the Queen, because it must be quite a challenge.
Well, it's a challenge because there have been so many iconic images already painted of her. I painted the Queen back in 1989. It actually was a 3-year project. But the great portrait had been painted back in 1953, which was a portrait painted by Pietro Annigoni. And of course, it's unnerving, it's testing, it's challenging, because there's a great image that's already out there. And do bear in mind that because of the coinage, because of the newspapers, the newsreels, the everyday documentaries, we are very familiar with the Queen's face and her gestures. So it is an enormous challenge to the artist to sort of freeze frame an aspect of her which characterizes her, becomes a sort of symbol of the monarch, and actually has a sort of long shelf life as an image that will stand the test of time.
How difficult is it, though, Richard, do you go for realism? Do you go for flattery? I mean, you don't want to offend the monarch, obviously.
Well, you obviously want to paint anyone and everyone in an attractive light. First and foremost, we're looking at painting a picture that you want people to look at. And secondly, once painting a portrait which should go beyond just the physical likeness. And it's sort of coming back to sort of being honest to your sitter, honest to yourself as an artist, and actually, at the end of the day, wanting to do the best job you can. We've known from recent portraits that they can receive an awful lot of flack. And in fact, when my portrait was unveiled, several of the tabloids carried the headline, a royal wrinkly rumpus. It was considered an unflattering portrait of its time. Well, time has obviously moved on, and people have decided to sort of reconsider their views, and here we are with the Royal Mail actually choosing this image as the new airmail stamp to coincide with the 60th anniversary of the coronation.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely beautiful, Richard. Let's talk to Kate here in the studio. It's interesting, of all these beautiful pieces that are done, that we're most familiar with stamps, with coinage, and the images of the Queen we see every day. How important are they in terms of how they're viewed by the public and by the royal family?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because we remember the portraits of the Queen much more than the photographs. It's the portraits we really remember, and we see her on our coins, we see her on our stamps, we see her on our notes. I mean, she is everywhere. And royal portraiture throughout history, it's been vital in really raising propaganda. We've got the Tudors, who made themselves seem much glittering, much more young than they were. Victoria, who really promoted the idea of a middle-class monarch. And what's really interesting, I think, about the pictures of our Queen is how we always want her to stay ever young. I remember there was a movement in the coin to have her from the much younger Queen in her 20s to the older Queen, and there was a lot of complaint. I think we always like to imagine her as always in her early 20s, which of course she no longer is.
Yeah, it's interesting. This is 1993, and we know the image changed in 1998 to sort of the slightly older and dare we say sort of slightly more wrinkled image. I mean, I have to say, I find the older image really beautiful. Do you think we're likely to see a change when she reaches the point in, I think it's 2015, of being the longest-serving monarch we've ever had?
Yes, September 2015, she's going to beat Queen Victoria and be our longest-serving monarch. And we will see a change, I think, then. I think we'll see many more portraits being commissioned. I think we're so protective of our monarch. Every time there's a portrait, we think it's maybe not good enough, or we don't like it, and we like it to be both. It's very difficult, as Richard was saying. You have to be both, you have to show her reality, but you also have to show her personality and her character, and also show her dignity. So it's not very easy, I think. It's a hard job for a portrait artist.
It is. It's very hard to balance between reality of her actually growing older and, as you say, our ideal of that young youthful-looking queen.
We love a youthful monarch. I mean, when you look at Queen Victoria's portraits, I mean, she's practically had Botox throughout them. She looks about 30 years younger. And I think particularly with the Queen, what's interesting when we see a portrait of her is in life. We're used to seeing her with Prince Philip, with her children, and in the portrait, she's alone. That's a big difference.
True.
Final thought from Richard, if we can, because all this talk about a possible new picture for the coinage in 2015, which would be fitting, wouldn't it, Richard, to mark that achievement if she makes it as beating Queen Victoria. Would you like to be involved in that image if you got the opportunity?
Oh, I'd absolutely love to. I'm often asked which is the picture I'm most proud of, and without a shadow of doubt, it is this particular portrait of Her Majesty. I felt that it was an absolute labour of love from beginning to end. But if there certainly was an opportunity to have another go, so to speak, gosh, that would be exciting.
Oh, wouldn't it just? Richard, really good to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much indeed. Talk about a talent. Absolutely love it. Kate, you're always a talent. Great to see you. Thanks very much. Let's find out what's coming up in the sport in just a moment, Charlie.